What's up, guys? Welcome to Visualization. Quick question. How important is it to have a calendar table in Power BI? Well, it's critical if you deal with time intelligence calculations. So that's why, guys, I'm going to teach you how to build a basic but reusable calendar table with Power Query. So let's get started. For today's tutorial, I have 3 different points. The first point here is about the M formula language. So this is the language that we use in Power Query. The second point here is about this powerful function called List.Dates. And finally, guys, as always, I have a really nice case where we're gonna put everything into practice. So now let's jump into the first point. Power Query M formula language. Here we have a high-level definition. M is the Power Query formula language that is generated by Power Query as you add transformation steps in the user interface of the Power Query editor. Okay, so I just want to give you guys a heads up here. We're not going to go into detail here. This is just a high-level definition. Okay, so please don't be scared. So now, if you want to learn more about this language, you can take a look at this book right here. So now let's go to the next point. So here we have this powerful function, list.dates. As you guys can see here, this function returns a list of date values of size count starting at start. The given increment, which is step, is a duration value that is added to every value. Okay, so here we have the syntax. This is the function here, list.dates, start as date, count as number, step as duration, right? And also here we have an example, which is basically the same function here, list.dates. And this function has 3 pieces. The first one is the start date. And here we can select any date. And also we have right here the dates for every day. In this particular case, we have for the next 5 years, right? And then the duration. Here we have 4 components: days, hours, minutes, and seconds. Okay, and for this particular case, we have just 1 day. So that's the duration, right? Okay, so please keep this in mind because we want to use this example to build our own Power Query table. And for this particular case, it's going to be a date table. Okay, so now let's go to the next point. Okay, are you guys ready for the case? So here we have the case. The question is build a calendar table with Power Query, and also we need to use the claim date from the premium table as reference to determine the date range. Okay, so now let's jump into Power BI Desktop. All right, here we are in Power BI Desktop, and our job is to create a date table by using Power Query. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do here is the following. So let's identify which date is the minimum date and which date is the maximum date within the claim date that belongs to the premium table. Okay, so let's do that. So in order to do that, let's create a couple of measures here real quick. Right click, measure. And what we're gonna do here is the following. Minimum date, right? And then we're gonna use the min function here. And then of course we're gonna use the claim date, right? Because we're gonna learn which date is the minimum date. Hit enter, boom. So let's copy this. And we're gonna do the same here, new measure, right there. Control V. And for this particular case, we care about the maximum date, right? So let's select the other function here, max, hit enter, and let's see what happens. The next thing we want to do here is let's create a couple of cards here. Card right there, and let's hit minimum, boom. So the minimum date here is the following. It's January 1st, 2010, right? So let's copy this. And now, so what I want to do here, let's select max. instead of minimum here. Boom. So we can easily see here that the minimum date goes from January 1st, 2010 through April 28th, 2018. And there you go. So why am I doing this? Because we want to learn the range, right, for this date. So now, after we do this, let's open the Power Query editor, okay? We're still here, home, and then transform data. So this new window pops up, and this is the Power Query editor. So what we're gonna do next is the following. So right click here, new query, and then blank query. Let's hit that option. And now we can copy and paste the piece of code that we had in our presentation, right? So let's do that. Control C, and now Control V. There you go. So we can also add right here equal, right? If you guys remember, the minimum date is January 1st, 2010. So what we're gonna do now is basically make a couple of changes here, 2010, right? January, and then January 1st, right? So what else? So now we know the maximum date here is April 28, 2018. It can be 8 years, right? But how about for security, we can add just 9 years here. And then what else? Duration, we're gonna leave as is. It's just 1 day, that's the duration. So after we do that, what we can do is basically approve these changes. And let's see what happens. Boom. So now we have a list of dates that go from 2010, January 1st, right? Up to 9 more years. So this is a list. So the next step here is the following. So we need to convert this list into a table. So what we can do here is go to this option right here, convert this list into a table. Hit that option and then hit OK. There you go. And we can also change the name of the column here. We can call it date if we want. We can also change right here the name of the table. And we can change this as dates, right? The next step here is to change the data type. And this should be date. There you go. Perfect. All right. So we have just created our calendar table, or also called dates, with just one column. So if we want to enrich this table, we can add more columns, right? So we can do that. So let's select the column here, and then let's go to add column. And there is an option here called date. So what we can do here is select a new column called year. How about that? Boom. Let's select date again. Let's go back to date here. And how about if we select month? Boom. There you go. Let's go back to date. Right here again, month. And we care about here the name of the month. Boom. If you want to add more columns, you can do that. You can keep playing here. How about if we want to add week? We can do that as well. Boom. There you go. You can also add more columns if you want. The strategy here is basically the same. Select date here and then go back to date. And how about if we select name of day? Boom. There you go. So that's how it works, my friends. It's quite straightforward. So the advantage of using Power Query to create a date table is that you basically have the piece of code, right? The initial piece of code, and then you can make a couple of changes and that's it. And you can keep reusing this piece of code if you want to create a different range. So quite straightforward, very useful. Now what we can do here is approve these changes. So let's go back to home here and then close and apply. And let's see what happens. It seems like it's working. Perfect. So what we can do now is the following. How about if we create a matrix here? Boom. And let's select right here dates. How about that? And let's select year here. Year is right there. This is just a number, right? So what's happening here? all the numbers here, all the years have been added. So let's leave it as it is now. And the next step here is to select the month name, okay? And let's add it as part of rows. If we want, we can do that, right? We just made a couple of changes here so we can visualize this better. Okay, perfect. That's how it works. So now, if you guys remember, we already had a measure here called premium. Let's drag this measure into this matrix and let's see what happens. You might say Nestor is not doing a right job here because we are seeing the same value for every single cell. So what's going on? So if you guys remember, we created a calendar table here, but let's see if there is a relationship between the calendar table and the premium table. Effectively, we don't have any type of relationship. And that's why we're seeing the same value for every single cell. So the next step here is to create a relationship. This is not part of the tutorial, but I just wanted to show you guys how this thing works. So date, claim date. There you go. So let's go back to report here. Perfect. It's working now. So now you might ask about the months are not well organized here because these are organized alphabetically, right? And that's something that we don't want. Okay, so let's make another change here. So let's go back to data here and then let's select dates, right? So the next thing that we want to do here is the following. Okay, so let's select month name here and then let's select sort by column. And we want to select and we want to organize this data by month. And let's see what happens. So let's go back to report. There you go. See? So now this is very well organized. So we have right here for every single year and also we have for every single month. So what do you guys think? So this is working and quite straightforward to create a date table by using Power Query. And like I said before, you don't need to have any knowledge about the M language, the Power Query language, right? So you need to learn just how to make a couple of changes to the initial code and then that's it. That's how it works. All right, so now let's go back to our presentation and see what else we need to solve. All right, guys, that was it. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Like I said at the beginning, this concept is quite straightforward, but there are a lot of advantages if you can learn how to create a date table or calendar table by using Power Query. So you can basically reuse the piece of code, make a couple of changes, and then that's it. All right. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please hit the subscribe button right now so you won't miss anything. Thank you guys and see you in my next tutorial.